I leaned back in my leather chair, the kind that seemed to swallow you whole if you let it. The skyline of Dallas shimmered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, sunlight bouncing off the steel and glass towers. I smoothed down the sleeve of my silk blouse, pale ivory, crisp against my skin. A detail no one ever paid attention to, but for me it was a small reminder. I had made it here on my own terms. The hum of the city below was faint, but steady, like background music I had grown used to. On my desk, fresh lilies filled the room with a delicate scent, soft, elegant, but strong enough to linger. I liked that balance. Then my phone buzzed. A name flashed across the screen I hadn't seen in years. Ethan Walker. My cousin. For a moment I froze. My manicured nails tapped against the glass desk as if they might drown out the rush of emotions flooding me. Betrayal, anger, but also something harder to define. Irony, maybe. Because Ethan wasn't just any cousin. He was the one who had taken everything from me when I was 21. My land, my trust, my place in the family. And now, after years of silence, he was reaching out. I inhaled slowly, letting the air steady me. On the surface, I was composed, the successful CEO, the woman with the perfect office, the flawless control. But inside, memories stirred like ghosts waiting to be faced. I pressed accept. Madeline. His voice crackled through the line, hesitant. We need to talk. It's about the land. The very land that had once defined me. The land that had nearly destroyed me. But he had no idea. No idea that I now owned the company building on it. I was 21 when everything shattered. The memory still feels sharp, like a glass splinter lodged under the skin. I remember standing in my father's study, the heavy oak desk between us, sunlight cutting across the room in harsh streaks. My hands trembled as I clutched the faded deed papers that once represented hope, the small piece of land my parents had promised would be mine. It wasn't much by most standards. A stretch of open Texas soil, dusty and wide, with a lone oak tree at the center. But it was ours. It was meant to be the start of my future. A place to build, to grow, to root myself. Ethan was there too, leaning casually against the doorframe with that smug grin I'd grown to despise. He was only a few years older than me, but he carried himself like he already owned the world. My father's voice had been calm, almost rehearsed. Madeline, we've decided the land will go to Ethan. He's better positioned to manage it. The words punched the air out of me. What do you mean? You promised this was supposed to be mine. My voice cracked, tears threatening to spill. Ethan stepped forward, the smirk never leaving his face. Come on, Mads. You know I can do more with it than you ever could. Real estate isn't a game for little girls. His words burned, searing humiliation into my chest. My throat tightened, my fingers dug into the fragile paper as if holding it tighter would change their decision. My mother avoided my eyes, silent, complicit. In that moment, the weight of rejection crushed me. I felt invisible, erased, like my dreams had been dismissed before they'd even had a chance. I remember storming out of the house, the Texas heat wrapping around me like fire. I sat beneath that lone oak tree, my oak tree, and let the sobs rip through me. My hands were dirty, my face streaked with tears, but I couldn't let go of the pain. It was then that my grandmother, Eleanor Brooks, found me. She lowered herself onto the dry grass beside me, her silver hair catching the sun. She pressed something small into my palm, a locket. Inside was a picture of her younger self, standing on the same land decades ago. Her voice was gentle, but fierce. Madeline, people can take what's on paper, but they can't take your will. That's the real inheritance. Don't forget that. I closed my fist around the locket. Something shifted inside me, a spark beneath the ashes. That night, I packed a single suitcase and walked away. If my family believed I was incapable, I'd prove them wrong. Not by fighting for scraps, but by building an empire. Starting over wasn't romantic. It was raw, terrifying, and lonely. I moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment in Fort Worth, where the paint peeled from the walls and the neighbors argued through paper-thin doors. My savings barely covered rent, and most nights, I survived on instant noodles and determination. But the locket never left my neck. Every time my confidence wavered, I held it, hearing my grandmother's words, "They can't take your will." I didn't know the first thing about real estate, but I knew how to learn. During the day, I worked as a receptionist at a property management office, answering phones, filing paperwork, making coffee runs. At night, I devoured every book I could find on zoning laws, financing, construction, and business strategy. My eyes burned from the late hours, but each page was a step toward reclaiming myself. That was when I met Diane Keller, the woman who changed everything. She was one of the senior brokers at the firm, sharp as glass, but with a quiet kindness underneath. She noticed I stayed late, scribbling notes long after the office emptied. One evening, she stopped at my desk. "You've got fire, kid," she said, setting down a thick folder. "But fire without direction burns out. Read these contracts. Understand them. Then come to me with questions." That folder became my lifeline. Diane became my mentor, not because she had to, but because she believed in me. For the first time since losing the land, someone saw me, not as weak or incapable, but as someone with potential. The years that followed were grueling. I took on side jobs, saved every dollar, and slowly began investing in small, rundown properties no one else wanted. I spent weekends painting walls, laying tile, learning how to stretch every resource. My hands blistered, my body ached, but the first time I flipped a property for profit, I cried harder than I had the day Ethan stole my land. It wasn't just money. It was proof. Proof that I could build something from nothing. By the time I was 27, I had acquired a modest portfolio, nothing flashy, just steady. But I kept my victories quiet. I rarely posted updates on social media, and when my family called, I kept details vague. "I'm doing fine," I'd say. "Work's keeping me busy." They thought I was scraping by, maybe still struggling in some small office. I let them believe it. What they didn't know was that my small wins had snowballed. One property became 3. 3 became 7. And with every deal, I learned, grew, and gained leverage. Diane connected me with investors who respected my grit. Slowly, I became a name people trusted in the development world. And then came the moment that felt like destiny. The very land Ethan had taken, my land, was being parceled for sale. Developers wanted it. Investors circled it. But I had something they didn't: history. I knew every inch of that soil, every shadow the oak tree cast at sunset. And I had the resources to act. I didn't just buy it back. I bought the entire development company managing it. Quietly, strategically, through partnerships and calculated moves. The girl who once sobbed under that oak tree was gone. In her place stood a woman who owned the future Ethan had stolen. And not even he saw it coming. The day Ethan walked into my office, the air felt different. Heavy, almost electric, like a storm waiting to break. I had agreed to meet him only after his third message. His first 2 had been curt, almost desperate, but this one carried weight. "Please, Madeline. We need to talk. It's about the company. About the land." So there he was, standing in the glass lobby of Brooks Development Group, though he didn't know yet that the name on the etched plaque belonged to me. I watched him from the mezzanine before descending. He looked older, but not wiser, the same restless arrogance in his posture, though dulled by worry. His tailored suit couldn't mask the unease in his eyes. "Madeline," he said, forcing a smile as I approached. "It's been a while." "It has," I replied smoothly, my heels clicking against the marble floor. "Come upstairs." I led him into my office, the heart of everything I had built. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Dallas skyline. Architectural blueprints, framed in sleek black, lined one wall. A modern desk of dark oak anchored the room, polished to a shine. Fresh orchids rested in a glass vase, their white petals perfect against the sunlight. Ethan's eyes darted around, suspicion creeping in. He was expecting a modest space, something borrowed. Not this. So, I began, easing into my leather chair. "You wanted to talk." He cleared his throat, tugging at his collar. "Yes. The development company handling the old Walker land, well, We've hit financial trouble. Investors are nervous. The company needs stability. I was hoping. He hesitated, as if tasting bitterness. I was hoping you might know someone who could help. The irony nearly made me laugh. My cousin, the man who once told me real estate wasn't a game for little girls, now sitting across from me, asking for help. I leaned forward, folding my hands. Ethan, do you know who owns this company? He frowned. Some board of suits. I've never met the owner. Well, I said, letting each word drop like a stone in water. You're looking at her. His face drained of color. What? I bought it. Every share, every asset. Brooks Development Group isn't just another firm, Ethan. It's mine. And so is the land. For a moment, silence swallowed the room. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again like a man gasping for air. That's impossible. You couldn't have. I did. I cut in, my voice steady calm. While you were busy burning bridges, I was building foundations. Brick by brick, deal by deal. The very land you stole from me is now under my name again. Not as a scrap of soil, but as the cornerstone of an empire. He shook his head, disbelief warring with shame. I don't understand. How did you? You don't need to understand, I said softly, though steel underlined every syllable. All you need to know is that the girl you dismissed, the cousin you humiliated, now owns everything you thought was yours. Ethan sank back in the chair, his shoulders slumping. His arrogance crumbled, leaving behind something raw, fear, maybe even regret. From the corner of my eye, I saw my reflection in the glass window. A woman who had survived betrayal, built her own fortune, and stood tall in the face of those who once doubted her. I let the silence stretch, savoring the shift in power. Then, with a slight smile, I said, "Welcome to my world, Ethan. I trust you'll find the view different from down there." Ethan sat there in stunned silence, his confidence collapsing like a poorly built house in a storm. For the first time in our lives, he wasn't in control. "I need your help," he finally said, his voice low, almost breaking. "The investors are pulling out. Without capital, the company can't continue. I thought maybe you could step in." The audacity nearly made me laugh. Years ago, he had stolen my land, paraded it as his achievement, and mocked me for daring to dream. Now he was sitting in my office, asking me to save him. I leaned back, crossing my legs, studying him the way a chess player studies a cornered king. "Help," I repeated, the word tasting different on my tongue. "Interesting request, considering what you took from me." His eyes flicked to the floor. Shame rippled across his face, but I wasn't letting him off that easily. "I could let you drown," I continued, my voice steady. "It would be poetic, really." The man who once said I didn't belong in real estate, undone by his own hubris. But I paused, letting the silence sink in. I believe in second chances if they're earned. Ethan's gaze snapped up. "What do you mean?" I stood, walking to the wide window, overlooking the city. My reflection stared back at me, strong, composed, untouchable. "If I agree to keep the company afloat, there will be conditions." He swallowed hard. "Conditions?" "Yes." I turned, meeting his eyes. "First, you resign from your position. Effective immediately. Your greed has already cost too much. You'll stay on only as an advisor, if I decide your input is worth hearing." His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. "Second," I said, my voice firm, "you will liquidate some of your personal assets and pay back the employees whose salaries you gambled away. They deserve respect, the kind you never gave me." He shifted uncomfortably, but nodded. "And third," I continued, stepping closer, "you will learn humility. That means no more shortcuts, no more lies. You'll start over, just as I did. But instead of building alone, you'll be under my oversight. If you want redemption, you'll earn it one brick at a time." Ethan exhaled, shoulders sagging under the weight of my words. "And if I refuse?" "Then you walk out of this office with nothing," I replied simply. "The company collapses, your name sinks with it, and I move forward stronger than ever." Either way, I win. Silence stretched between us, heavy and final. For once, he wasn't the loudest voice in the room. Finally, Ethan nodded slowly. I'll do it, whatever you say. I didn't smile, not yet. Instead, I placed a hand on the desk, steady, controlled. Good. Because this isn't just about saving a company. It's about breaking the cycle. You took from me once, Ethan. You won't take again. From anyone. His eyes flickered with something unfamiliar, not arrogance, but gratitude. Maybe even a hint of respect. For the first time, the power was mine. But it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rewriting the story. On my terms. Months passed, and the changes were subtle but undeniable. Ethan kept his word. Under my guidance, he learned accountability, and gradually, the arrogance that had once defined him softened into cautious respect. He still stumbled, still made mistakes, but the difference was that he no longer acted like he owned the world, or me. The company thrived. Projects that once lingered in uncertainty now moved forward with precision. Employees who had once doubted leadership now looked to me with trust, admiration, even hope. Each completed building, each thriving neighborhood, was a quiet testament to the woman I had become. And me? I had learned something deeper than victory. Power alone isn't satisfying. Control isn't enough. It's the respect you command through perseverance, through integrity, through refusing to be erased. That's what lasts. Sometimes, in the quiet moments before dawn, I would hold the locket my grandmother gave me, tracing the tiny photograph inside. It reminded me of where I had started, of the small girl who had been wronged and humiliated but had refused to let that define her. That oak tree, the land, the betrayal, it had all been the foundation for something greater. Not just a company, not just wealth, but a life lived on my terms. I met with my family occasionally now, not because I had to, but because I chose to. The conversations were cautious at first, filled with apologies and stilted smiles. Over time, we found a rhythm. I offered guidance, not judgment. I listened, I corrected, I encouraged. And for the first time, I saw glimpses of the people they could be, beyond their past mistakes, beyond the selfishness that had once defined them. The locket rested on my office desk that afternoon, sunlight catching its edges. I touched it lightly, and a calm smile spread across my face. Everything had changed, yet the lesson remained the same. Resilience is more valuable than any land, any inheritance, any stolen opportunity. I stood, looking out at the skyline, the city alive beneath me. I had walked a long road, faced betrayal, clawed my way back from nothing. And now I wasn't just standing, I was soaring. The woman who had once cried under that oak tree was gone. In her place stood someone unbreakable, someone unstoppable, someone who had taken everything she had lost and transformed it into power, purpose, and grace. I whispered to myself, not as a boast but as a truth. I built my world. And no one, not even the people who tried to break me, can take it away.